Hey everybody, I'm Zach.
And I'm Jesse, and you're watching the Patreon bonus stories.
All right, I'm excited to get into this first story. It's attempted murder.
Oh my God.
We're doing Murder, She Wrote on the show.
Let's watch the news here.
Okay.
Rage nearly sends a driver off the street near 204th and Center. Good evening, I'm Alexandra Stone.
I'm David Earl. Everyone is mostly okay tonight, but deputies say this could have ended much worse. KETV News Watch 7's Michelle Bandour joins us live in the newsroom with a video that helped deputies figure out what happened, Michelle.
Well, David and Alexandra, as you know, usually in a case of road rage, it's one driver's story versus another. Who do you believe? Well, in this situation, sheriff's deputies watched the entire angry exchange caught on the car's cameras.
This is how the story
I'm banged up pretty good.
ends.
He swerved in front of me and slammed on his brakes as hard as he could.
That's Ken Woodard on the phone, and you're watching video from 4 different angles from his car's cameras.
Having the video from the Tesla vehicle was really beneficial to our investigation.
Woodard hadn't been out of the house for almost 2 weeks due to COVID-19, so he took his Tesla out to get the test.
I needed to go get another test to show I was negative, and that's where I was returning from.
Woodard was less than a mile from home when he encountered 40-year-old Brian Frey Wednesday afternoon around 12:30 near 204th and Center. Frey was several car lengths behind Woodard, both going around the speed limit, but a red car in front of them was driving much slower. Woodard wanted to pass that car, so when he merged to get around it,
That triggered something in him. He threw his hands in the air like he was frustrated with me. He forcefully whipped himself behind me. He accelerated into my bumper, so that was the first hit. Then he pulled up next to me and forced me off the road completely, almost into the guardrail going over Center Street.
then the collision, which he says left Frey with a busted rim and flat tire and thousands of dollars in damage to his Tesla's front end. Douglas County Sheriff's deputies say they heard 2 different versions of what happened until they saw the video.
It's amazing everybody's, for the most part, okay.
Well, Captain Hudson told us that the other driver had said that the Tesla was the one that was trying to force him off the road. But again, when they watched that video, they said they knew that they had to ticket the other driver. Now, it happened in about a minute. Woodard tells me they both got out of their cars and that he asked using profanity why he did that. He said Frey told him to stay back. They both sat in their vehicles until deputies arrived, and then deputies gave Frey a ticket for willful, reckless driving.
So, couple things. First of all,
What?
who does this and gets away with a ticket?
Yeah, can we talk about the American justice system here for a second? Okay. If you and I were walking down the street,
Yeah.
okay, and I got mad because you passed me or something,
Yeah.
right? You're speed walking. And so then I decided to just like run you off the road like that. And then I
Right.
picked up a stick and I was like whacking you with it.
Right.
When the police arrived, wouldn't they be like, okay, Zach, we're going to arrest you, charge you with assault and battery, maybe assault with a dangerous weapon, and like serious jail time?
Or it could be attempted murder. I mean,
Right.
let's talk about this incident here. First of all,
You're driving highway speeds.
in a car, using your car as a weapon, and you get ticketed and you might lose your license for a year? Why is
What?
this person not behind bars? That's my first question, completely tangential to the other topic that we're talking about, which is that if he didn't have Tesla cam,
Right. I would not believe it. If you said to me, no, this is what happened
This is
today,
what happened,
really,
you wouldn't
really,
believe it.
I would be like, no, there's no way someone would pull up in front of you and stop.
you probably just didn't see him. And
you weren't paying attention, and you were probably causing the road rage
Right.
yourself. No, I would not, and thank goodness he had it because, again,
you heard the cop there. He was like, yeah, it's a good thing that he had the thing because that really helped clear it up.
Yeah.
Read between the lines. Yeah, we don't usually issue tickets based on road rage because there's no proof.
Right,
It's always
he said, she said,
she
right.
said. And this is a prime example of why Teslas are so much better. If you had one forward-facing dash cam, you'd miss half of it.
Exactly.
You'd miss the side attack.
And
You'd
the
miss
rear attack?
The rear attack where he hit his bumper.
right.
That
So let me just ask you,
Yeah.
was this guy, so basically he was hoping, because in the United States, it's probably true around the world, if you're rear-ended, 95% of the time it's your fault, the one rear-ending the car in front of you.
Right.
Because it's, assumed that you were driving too fast, weren't paying attention. So was Brian Frey, the perpetrator here, was he hoping that basically he'd get off because he was rear-ended and he'd be able to, oh, Judge, this guy hit me from the rear?
First of all, this guy is crazy. This
Yeah.
guy is an idiot.
Yeah.
And even if that was his thought,
Where is this, by the way?
this is in Nebraska. This is outside of Omaha,
Okay.
Nebraska. I don't know why.
So, I mean,
It goes back to this thing that I heard recently, and it won't get out of my head. 50% of the population is below average intelligence.
well,
that
that's how
should
it
just-
works.
that
That's,
should
that's
just-
how any average works.
I know, but it's so something in my brain went like, oh, right.
Okay, but here's the thing. And we see the whole thing unfold here, right? There was the Tesla passes him. If passing a car triggers you to say, like, he passed me and he's driving a Tesla, I'm going to go kill him, then this guy has mental problems.
He could have easily killed this guy.
Yes, and I want to talk about another effect here. Yes, he's mad at the Tesla driver for some unknown reason and wants to go after him. What if he had caused a serious highway incident where it was not just the Tesla, but I mean, you slam on your brakes in the middle of a highway, there's people behind you.
Yeah.
And so what if there was a jackknife truck? And what if there was a school bus full of kids?
What if anyone died or was actually seriously injured? I mean, the guy said that he was pretty banged up. We never get to see his face. I'm assuming that you don't want to be in an accident like that.
No.
But he wasn't hospitalized, as far as we know. Like, they both got out of the car and were swearing at each other, but they didn't have to go to the hospital with injuries. Right. Luckily. And I think a lot of that has to do with you being in a Tesla. Just the tires on the Tesla, just the fact that they put big honking tires for you to accelerate, but also brake really hard. Helped a lot, and I guess because he knew he was being attacked. Like, that's just crazy.
Another reason why that story we did about putting the USB drive in the car when you sell it.
If you right now have a Tesla and you don't have the stick in your car, it could be a little thumb drive, it can be all the way up to a big honking 1 terabyte SSD drive. Go put it in your car. Go order one right now.
I think that's your mother, and I think that's your grandmother. We know tons of people who don't do that yet, either because they don't know how, or it's like, well, it seems too complicated.
It could save you so much money.
Yeah.
If this guy, first of all, if this came down to like, well, you don't have any footage to prove this, so you're going to get the ticket. You're going to have to pay for the insurance. Your insurance rates are going to go sky high. You're going to have to pay the insurance deductible. All of this stuff combined together would be so much money, and you could go buy a stick right now for like $20.
Also,
literally the stick that they're putting in the new cars, the 64 gig stick, $20, and could save you thousands upon thousands.
And it's set and forget. Once you've done the steps and put it in, you're done. You don't really. It's not like every day you have to take it out. So like you can think of it that way. Also, if you want to, you can put a bigger stick in, like an SSD drive, and really just hold weeks and months worth of footage.
Right, and use it as like a big camera of your adventures too.
Right.
Like you can be like, oh, remember the deer that we saw, or remember that neat thing that we drove by and we didn't have time to take pictures of.
Right. I mean, we have a video on this where we explain how to set it up and use it, and there's tons more, on the internet.
And they've since changed it. It basically will set itself up now.
Right.
So there's really no excuse. You should please, if you haven't done it, I just really wouldn't want this to happen to you.
Right, because I'm sure that this guy went out for his drive that day and never thought something like this would happen. Why would you expect that to happen? But these things do happen, and now you're covered.
Yeah.
So, wow.
Yeah.
So let's go on some good news here. Truck leasing company Pride Group Enterprises announced last week that it has placed a $3 million reservation for 150 Tesla semi-trucks with an option to buy 350 more.
So again, the production of the Semi has been pushed to 2021. We have an early reservation ourselves for the Semi.
Night of the unveiling, we put in a reservation, so we must be high on the list.
Yes.
And so I think we're number 85 or 65. I can't remember. So I don't know if they pay attention to those numbers or if like Walmart gets to get theirs in front of us. But basically, we're high on the list. We want to take delivery as soon as we can. And the idea here is we want to get truck drivers into the seat. We want truck drivers to drive it. Like that's our goal.
Right.
Because I feel like it's going to be great to talk about it and stuff. But I think a lot of truck drivers, just like regular car drivers, until they experience it firsthand, aren't going to know what we're talking about.
Right. It's a transformational truck. There aren't that many trucks that have having the seat in the middle, having two giant screens. I mean, I've talked to truck drivers before, and
having autopilot.
I mean, why don't they have autopilot? First of all, second of all, the technology that they have to deal with is like, I don't know. It seems like it's from a science fiction book from like the 1890s where they're like, oh, but there might be a computer and you'd have to, use a crank. There's so much dumb stuff that they have to put up with that is like technology and this is for their safety. that doesn't work. Having a big screen that Tesla designs and operates would be a game changer.
I want to talk about it from the perspective of the ownership of the truck. If you're the leasing company, whatever. Right now, you can take out your app and you can track your car. So if your wife takes the car or whatever, you can see exactly where she is, what speed she's going at all times. And so same thing here. If you own a bunch of trucks, you can see where they're at. And so you can track packages and stuff. Like, it just makes so much sense.
Right.
Why would you want to have to add additional hardware to your trucks?
And again, fuel and maintenance costs. Those are pretty much the two biggies.
I forget to mention them every time, but I mean, fuel and maintenance, it makes the operating the cost of the truck go down dramatically. Right. The length, the life of the truck goes up. The
safety, the anti-jackknifing ability.
Anti-jackknifing. That'll, like, each of these things on their face would be enough to, like, just switch to it.
It would be cool to, once we have it, to just kind of have...
Try to jackknife it? Is that what you said?
No. But it would be nice to kind of make a little advertisement where it's like, anti-jackknife, you're going to want this, sonny boy. Like, having some kind, like, because if they were just like their own little things that you would be talking about individually, everyone would be like, I want that.
No, I mean, can you imagine if you came up with the technology that you could add to existing diesel trucks and you're like, hey, for $1,000, we can make it so you'll never jackknife.
Right.
They'd be like, sign me up.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, because, I mean, that's one of your biggest fears, and these trucks can stop that. This is pretty cool. This story is from Electrek. It's of the first Tesla yellow cab spotted in New York City. So back in October of 2019, New York City's Taxi and Limousine Commission, which is basically the body in charge of all taxis, they approved the first EV taxi cab that's allowed in New York City, the first model of EV, and that is...
the Tesla Model 3.
Yeah. So here it is. You can see it here. Now, there's 13,587 yellow cabs in New York City. And if you're like me, you're like, is that just a brand? It's not a brand. You have to make your car yellow per the order of this commission so that everyone can tell that that's a cab. That makes sense.
Yeah.
And so there's 13,000 of those. And now that Tesla Model 3s are allowed on the list, that means that that's one of the cars that you're allowed to turn into a taxi. I don't know why they were approving certain cars and not others. I'm guessing it had to do with safety or emissions. But
I mean, like, the Model S and X aren't on that list.
Right. I mean, this is the only EV, full battery EV, that's allowed to be a yellow cab in New York, which is, I don't know. I'm surprised that Model S wasn't on there.
I mean, I bet that Uber was ahead of them, Uber or Lyft. I'm sure that there are Model 3 drivers that drive Uber. And
sure.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen them in, LA, for example. And I'm sure that if we went to New York and needed a car, we usually drive down. But I'm sure that there are some Uber and Lyft drivers that are doing Model 3s because, again, you're going to be saving so much on fuel and maintenance.
Right. So, I mean, if you own a Medallion, it just seems smart to switch over to Model 3.
Right.
It's going to save you a ton of money, and it's safer. Check out this story. So this is a story from Tasmanian. Ferdinand Dudenhofer, he's the director of the Center for Automotive Research in Germany. He has calculated that if all the cars in Germany had Tesla Autopilot last year, accidents would have been reduced by 90%.
So instead of 281,000 accidents, there would have only been 29,000.
And what's interesting here is that I found out that in Germany, the accident rates have actually been going up. Over the last 3 years, they've increased by 6%. So their rates in Germany are actually higher than they are here in the U.S. In 2019, there was one accident per 175,000 miles, or 281,000 kilometers driven, versus in the U.S., there was one accident per 479,000 miles driven. And that led me to, like, that's a big difference. That's like a more than 2-to-1 difference. And I'm like, are German drivers just so much worse? Like, or do we count accidents differently?
Well, also, we have larger stretches of road. We travel more miles per year, so...
They can't possibly have worse drivers than us. Can I just say that? Like, I don't think any country could have worse drivers
And I mean,
us.
I know that they have a much better driver training system.
I mean, they do drive faster on certain roads, but I don't think that could be it.
It's a smaller country. So you're traveling around less, so it's a weird...
but it's per mile.
Right, but if you have the same number of accidents per time, I'm just saying
I don't think your logic works.
denser streets and denser everything's
in the U.S.
denser. No, in Germany.
Oh, so they're driving slower?
They're closer to other cars all the time. In the U.S.,
so when you have more accidents, that's what's causing the more accidents?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
It's a higher population density country, whereas in the United States, you could have a guy in Wyoming who never sees another car for thousands of miles.
All right, I'll buy
and it's
that
like,
argument.
how would that person get into an accident? Like, that's so much harder to get into an accident.
But let's go back to his first supposition here, which is that if they all had autopilot, they would have gotten into less accidents. And we get this written to us a lot, which is, I believe maybe that, full self-driving auto taxis will happen, but I don't think regulators will allow it. And it's like, regulators are just people, and they have to look at facts and data. They can't just be like, well, I don't think so. And so if you present them with data, they have to listen to it. And we have good data on accidents in every country. Mm-hmm. So I think as Teslas begin to drive around autonomously and have less accidents, hopefully, then we're just going to have good data showing you can't not listen to us.
Yeah. And, there's always this argument of like, oh, but Tesla Autopilot is mostly used on highways and highway travel is safer than, or, less accidents per mile than everywhere else. And it's like, yeah. But if you look at like without autopilot miles, you see that Teslas are also safer. Again, it's not like a perfect scientific thing, but you have to use your critical thinking skills here. And you can't just be like, I'm going to throw away evidence for no reason, but just because it doesn't match up perfectly.
Right.
What do Teslas have that other cars don't? They have regen braking, which means as soon as you take your foot off the pedal, you're going to start slowing down. It makes the car feel super nimble. And I'll tell you how I know this. When it gets really cold, regen braking goes away until you start to warm up the battery by driving it. And the car feels like a brick. You're just like, wow, this car feels heavy. I have to actually hit the brake all the time. The car does not respond the way I want it to. So most of the time, the car feels like it weighs 12 pounds. Mm-hmm. I feel like the heaviest thing in the car. So regen braking is one.
Right.
The next is...
I kind of wish, by the way, that Teslas had like a heater coil and could just throw the energy away to keep your regen braking like working.
Yeah, I mean, I think you can do the preconditioning in the morning if you know that you're going to leave at a certain time. You still can't turn that on through the app, which is dumb, but
I know.
We'll get there. The other aspect is Teslas usually have better tires than pretty much all other cars. They come standard with nicer, usually all-season tires or all-weather tires.
I think people forget that is like one of the most important things on a car. That's where rubber hits the road. Like that is where things happen. And yeah, if you have really good tires, a lot of problems are solved.
Right. Teslas generally have a lot wider tires than most other cars, which means that the braking and handling and pretty much everything is vastly improved. Yeah. They are more expensive tires, which is sort of the disadvantage, which you'll notice if you ever try to buy any sort of tires for your Tesla. You're just like, oh, it costs more. But the number of times you might have been saved by an accident.
Yeah.
Then there's all the safety features, which of course are huge. I can't tell you the number of times where I think 90% of the time my car will warn me and I'm like, yeah, I know that the car just pulled out in front of me. But if I weren't looking, it would be in trouble. I
just thought of a really cool app that Tesla could employ, which is like, it has good data, right? It could know that like, oh, you just came to a stop before hitting that guy in front of you. If you had worse tires, it would have been an accident. Like, ding!
Right.
You could just keep track of it. Because you don't remember that. You get home and you're like, oh, how was work today? It was fine. You don't remember that, like, I almost got into an accident. And it's because I had better tires.
Right.
I should remember that. You don't.
Right. And I mean, another aspect of it is acceleration. You can get out of situations a lot sooner.
Yeah.
All of these different things combined make the car safer on average than every other car on the road. And you add autopilot to that, I will tell you right now, autopilot does make me a safer driver because I don't have to be paying attention to the car in front of me. So my eyes are not glued.
Yep.
We've said this so many times before, and I'm so sorry if you're tired of me saying it. I can look around, I can check in on people and be like, is he texting? Holy crap, he is texting. I'm going to get the heck out of here.
I want to talk about the future of Teslas here is that right now, we talked about how Teslas are just taking a picture of what's going on and not thinking from frame to frame. But now with the full self-driving beta release, they're actually able to go like, oh, that's a dog. It's here. Right. It's moving. I'm going to think of it like a human thinks, and that the dog is moving. In the future, when you're driving down the street and you see a car that looks, I don't know, kind of sketchy to you, maybe it has some dents in it or something, you might take a special notice of it and give them a little extra clearance. What Tesla can do in the future is go, that guy has been in 3 previous accidents.
Right.
On Fridays when it's, happy hour. So
Right.
I'm going to stay way far away from that car.
Right.
You don't know that data. You can't keep track of that.
Exactly. Tesla could access the databases, read license plates, and just say, stay away from this driver. It's a bad driver.
Right.
Just that alone, if you had that system today and it was like, no, which drivers are the worst, people would be like, oh, thank goodness.
Yep.
Because I'll tell you, and it's mostly because you taught me this, but when I'm driving, I am constantly just like, what's wrong with this person? What's wrong with this person? What's wrong with this person? Like, oh, that bumper sticker. I'm going to avoid that car. Oh, ding on the back thing. I know that person's a bad driver. Or, oh, that car is super beat up. Or, oh, that, like, all of these reasons. And I'm just like, get away from you, get away from you, get away from you. I'm going to be on this safer stretch of road with people who drive sensibly. Or like, oh, that guy weaved into that lane. Time to get away from you. All of those different things.
And I want to say, like, prejudging people sounds like an awful thing to do, but when it's your safety that's involved,
right,
you should be prejudging. It's not to say that you're right. It's just to say to be a little extra cautious is probably the smartest thing to do.
Especially when it's not hurting anyone,
right,
and it's just on the road.
They're never going to know, right? They're never going to get home and be like, the Tesla stayed away from me.
It doesn't matter.
Right.
It's your safety that's paramount. And if the car could be doing this and know all of this,
well, and here's another thing. As you pointed out, you can actually now look at other people and see that they're texting. Teslas could do this. You could program them so they're like, I think there's a high probability that car is texting.
Well, and also sees a car doing a sketchy thing.
Yeah.
Then the whole network knows, hey, that car did one sketchy thing.
Yes.
And we could all start to learn,
yes,
not we, the network could start to learn, what that means. Because to me, I'm just like, avoid. But maybe you say, okay, this is only the second time that car has ever done that, and so it's not the end of the world.
Look how police officers now catch people. They park on the side of the road. You drive by them. As soon as you know there's a police officer there, usually because other drivers alert you,
Mm-hmm.
you are the best driver in the world.
Right.
Slow and alert. Well, what if in the future, like you said, we could know that guy's been swerving for the past 5 miles, and the police have that data too because they're driving a Tesla,
right,
and they could be like, let's go check up on that guy.
It starts a conversation, definitely a debate that we would want to have and talk about and be like, well, should the police have that information? I totally agree with that. But at least we're able to get to that point as opposed to like, I don't know, oh, no, we're just going to wait until something bad happens and then the police are going to be involved. It's like,
that's our system now.
Right. And
we have a pretty horrible system. 1 million people a year die on the road, so we have a lot of room for improvement. 1 million people a year.
We're currently worried about COVID-19. Rightfully so. Dangerous stuff. Many people have died. 500,000 people have died.
In the United States or in the world?
In the United States.
In the United States, it's 230,000 people.
Almost been a year. More people have died on the roads. Maybe not this year. Maybe more people
in the world. Yes, in the United
Okay,
States, like 35,000 people die on the roads every year.
So I'm just saying, if we were as terrified by the roads as we were by COVID-19, and we were taking the precautionary measures, by
no, we just got used to it. That's all. I'm saying, like the first year of driving, if 35,000 people died on the roads, you'd be like, we're not doing this anymore. No more driving.
Exactly.
Right. We just got used to it.
We just got used to it.
So much so that it's not even in the news anymore. Hardly, unless the wreck is a super duper 5 cars involved, they don't even bother telling you.
Right. And that is the scary part to me.
Yeah.
And once we can actually fix the problem, that is when I think a lot of people are going to start to be like, yeah, that was crazy. Can you believe it? Because chances are someone who was either killed or injured in an accident or has been in an accident, or you have been in an accident. And all of these things combined they have a bigger effect than just the monetary cost or just some statistic.
Right.
It's a traumatic experience, and especially if you're injured or anything like that, it's going to change the way that you live and the way that you experience the world. You're going to be less happy as a person.
Look at our president-elect. His family, back when he was a young politician, killed in a car wreck. It shaped his life. Like that. This is not something that's just like it never happens. It happens every day.
Right. And again, we're getting it's just complacency. Yeah. And let's talk about complacency for a bit. Beginning of this year, you and probably everyone in your family was super freaked out about the virus. You would do every little thing. You'd be scrubbing your groceries. You'd be doing all sorts of things. Are you doing that now?
Right.
I know that some of you are, but not everyone. Lots of people have just laxed up, loosened up. Oh, whatever. And why? Back in, February or April, there were hardly any cases. So, you wearing a mask and scrubbing your groceries didn't have as big a statistical impact on it as now. But now everyone's like, yeah, whatever, wear it below my nose. It doesn't matter. It's just, I needed to breathe, so I took my mask. All of this stuff, it shows how people are complacent. I'm not blaming anyone. It just shows how complacent we can be so quickly over something that is so scary. And that, again, brings it right back to climate change because people are just going to get complacent about it. A lot of people, first they were ignorant, And then maybe they were like, oh, do you hear about that? I'm a little worried about it. And then they're like, yeah, well, whatever.
Right.
We're just going to be complacent about it. And I think that we need to learn that and learn how to fix those complacency issues.
Exactly.
I mean, I know that we're not, humans were not designed to constantly be assessing these sorts of things. We never had a human society this large with such looming problems. The biggest problem you'd have would be like a snake or a tiger or, starving. Those would be the things that you'd be worried about.
Right.
So I don't know. We need to be thinking about how to change systems to react to that.
I mean, that's why we have governments, so that you every day don't have to think about it. Your government sets policies so that you don't have to think about it. It's taken care of for you.
That's an excellent point.
But let's do a little history lesson here. You ready?
Okay.
Okay. So what happened pretty much this day in 2008?
Let's see. I was going to 8th grade. No, 7th grade.
Okay. I'm talking not in your life.
Oh. I don't know. I was in 7th grade. You think I know anything that happened?
In pretty much this day in 2008, Tesla almost went bankrupt. So let's jump down here to this tweet. John Ehrlichman said, on this day in 2008, Tesla secures $40 million loan to avoid bankruptcy. Today, it's the most valuable automaker in the world. And Elon said, that funding round completed at 6 p.m. on Christmas Eve in 2008. Last hour of last day possible, as investors were leaving town that night and we were 3 days away from bankruptcy. I put in all the money I had, didn't own a house, and had to borrow money from friends to pay rent. Difficult time. Vincent said, and it turns out to become the best decision ever. Elon said, I put in my last money even though I thought we would still fail. But it was either that or certain death for Tesla. Extremely difficult to raise money for an electric car startup, considered super quirky back then, while stalwarts like GM and Chrysler were going bankrupt. Zane said, how close was Tesla from bankruptcy when bringing the Model 3 to mass production? Elon said, closest we got was about a month. Model 3 ramp was extremely stressful and painful for a long time. From mid-2017 to mid-2019, production and logistics, hell. And then Pranay said, the loan was obviously super important, but another event that kept Tesla from bankruptcy was a Tesla financing round on Christmas Eve in 2008. Elon personally saved Tesla. Steve Jurvetson described that event as extraordinary act of entrepreneurial zeal and commitment. And Steve said, the loan and financing round you reference are the same. It was a convertible note to the next round. Elon led the financing in late 2008 in the company's darkest hour. Elon's commitment to do it all himself, if need be, flipped investor sentiment from fear, and it saved Tesla. Elon said, super appreciate your support, Steve. That convertible loan gave us 6 months of runway. Fortunately, Daimler invested $50 million in May of 2009, 5 months later. And then James said, and in 2018, when you had no more money to buy Tesla stock, you agreed to keep working for Tesla for no pay at all, apart from the right to buy more Tesla later at the then current market price, if you could grow the company's revenue, profit, and market cap enormously. Yes, although I didn't expect the stock to rise so much so soon. The reason for the stock options is that they're needed to help pay for humanity to get to Mars in 10 to 20 years. There's your history lesson.
Wow. I mean, the growth story. I mean, we're talking less than 20 years.
12 years.
12 years. That's insane.
It's insane. It's insane that companies like Daimler and Toyota invested in Tesla and then pulled their money out almost immediately when their money doubled. They're like, oh, I made 50 into 100. We're so smart. Yeah, you could have pretty much owned Tesla. You could have had a major stake.
They could have bought Tesla.
If they just kept upping in the different rounds, they would be basically Tesla / Daimler.
Right. I'm glad that they didn't buy Tesla because I don't think that we would be where we are today. There wouldn't be any Model 3. They'd still be making the Model S. They wouldn't have made the Model X. It would have normal doors if they did make it.
Well, and this shows how stupid those two companies are, because I just want to point out, why would you put money in those companies unless you were playing it as a bet, as let's hedge our bets, invest in this company. If it becomes huge, we'll kind of own it.
Right.
But instead, you get out early.
Right.
What?
It was so stupid of them. And it goes back to their leadership model of just there's this old fashioned leadership model of companies that it's just like, we're not going to innovate or do anything new or interesting. We're going to be super slow about it.
Why did they put that money in? So the $50 million from Daimler was so that they could get their smart car with an electric motor and powertrain. So that, I mean, Tesla motors and powertrains were there.
And
why did Toyota? RAV4. Both of those companies are like, we don't know how to do it. Can you do it for us?
Only reason that they did that was because of CARB, the California Air and Resource Board. Needed to hit some emissions requirement. And again, these are the reasons why we're seeing the Honda E and all of these cars, which aren't coming to the United States.
Right.
They're only going to Europe, as so far as we know now.
Right.
With Biden as president, we're going to talk about this more later on, but with Biden as president, that could very well change.
Yeah. So we told you about this story at the top of the show, this picture of the wingsuit here, and I want to get to this. So this is a wingsuit that is...
Let's just watch it.
Okay.
What does it take to shape the future? We are bound by physics, not imagination. It all starts with an electric pulse.
So that was wingsuit pilot Peter Salzman with an electric system.
Yeah, that's a chest-mounted. He has 2 carbon fiber impellers with 7.5 kilowatts of power, spinning at 25,000 RPMs. By the way, you see how close that is? Like, you don't want to stick your hand in there.
You don't want to be like, I dropped my
phone.
You would not have a phone anymore.
You get 5 minutes of flight time. But I want to point out, this isn't like you take off and then you land. This is you get dumped out of a helicopter or a plane.
Gas-powered helicopter.
And, so you're basically, the 5 minutes is that you were already falling towards Earth. You didn't have to, taking off, there would be no way to do it.
Yeah, you'd hold on to some wheels. You'd have some wheels.
No, but what I'm saying is there's not enough power. I don't think enough power to take off. I think you're getting so much speed already from your flight.
Yeah, the climb that he does is already after a dive.
Right, it's just a parabola climb.
Which is still impressive, don't get me wrong. I think that it's very cool. I don't want to do that. I don't want to jump out of a plane, even if I do have a parachute, wingsuit, and
when you see
propulsion.
someone jump out of a plane, do you do that thing that I do, which is I get a little whoa.
No, I'm a little bit more used to it probably because of video games and stuff. Okay. You're used to jumping out of planes.
I still am just I could never do it. I don't think I could.
There have been too many games like Grand Theft Auto and Just Cause where you're in a plane and then you're just I'm going to jump out.
But the CEO of Neuralink, Max Hodak, he talks about doing things that scare him and pushing his fear. And I really respect that. But he's become a skydiver because he feared it.
Yeah.
And I don't think I could ever do that.
I don't agree with that.
Really?
I think that there are some things that I fear that are stupid. I used to fear making a phone call, calling anyone on the phone. I was just I don't want to do it. Right. That was a dumb fear. I would never pick up the phone and just suddenly be it'd be dead. Like that would never happen. So like, there's no reason for me to be that scared.
Right.
But jumping out of a plane, there's plenty of reasons.
Oh yeah, no, when I was watching
the guy who jumped out of a plane with no parachute,
yeah,
or it was a helicopter.
Yeah, his 50 closest friends are all dead.
Yeah.
So
because they all
died.
skydived.
Yeah.
Just died skydiving.
So I mean, yeah, there's this, I see your point.
Yeah. Okay, but getting back to this thing, this is it's a publicity thing for their electric car, the iX3.
Well, it makes me mad because in the thing it says we're not limited by imagination, and I'm like, you know what, BMW, you are.
Right.
You can't imagine what you can do with your cars.
And the quote is really weird too. We're limited by physics, not imagination. You're pretty much always limited by your imagination and physics.
Right.
It's just, I get what you're saying, but like, we're only limited by our imagination works a little bit better.
Right.
Instead of we're not, like, it's just some marketing schlock.
Yeah.
Like, you know, Elon, when he talks about stuff, like, he's so well read.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I just started reading Dune the other day. First couple pages, you get the fear is the mind killer thing. And I was like, oh, I see how this affected Elon. You know, he's read so many, like, books. I feel like I have to keep up.
Yeah. You should. I want to just put this out to everyone. We need to read more. I mean, all of us. Like, I've been trying to get through the Culture series, and you know, it's tough. Like, you got to carve out some time for it, and but it's important because I think that it goes to a different part of your brain. I mean, I don't want to sound too old fashioned because I know that I grew up with books, right? I love movies, I love other forms, but reading is really cool because you are imagining while you're reading. So as you're reading a description, you're the only one in the world with that particular view of how that unfolds in your mind.
Right.
When you then see the movie of it, you can love the movie or whatever, but that's the director's view of that scene.
I don't know if I've ever shared this, but when I was a little kid, you read me Harry Potter, and you wouldn't pronounce Hermione correct. You said
Hermione.
Hermione. Or Hermione. You said Hermione.
Hermione, I think.
So I imagined Hermione Granger, as a nun from, you ever see Madeline?
Yeah.
Not the movie, the live action movie, the animated, the nun who looks after their orphanage. I imagined that as Hermione. So I had a completely different reading of the book than most people, probably, definitely. And then when the movie came out, I was just like, okay, her name is Hermione. She doesn't look like a nun. And she's played by Emma Watson, who isn't even, if you read the books and you read the description of Hermione, that's not Hermione.
Right.
So now we have this, like, people who watch the movie first they can just be like, oh, slot right into that instead of having to imagine it themselves. I don't know. I think that, the reading, especially, and again, this is the difference between Elon and some marketing hack guy who just like, what can we say? And it's such a fine point.
Yeah.
I mean, they made a guy jump out of the thing, and I'm worried about we're not limited by imagination. It's like, yes, you are.
When they do stuff, you can just see it immediately. It's all been marketized. It's all been like, how can we make it seem
what can we do? Cool? We'll go to the Alps. Very cool looking.
He'll land next to a BMW.
Yeah, very good.
But it's like, okay, but we didn't really get the science out of it.
Right.
I wanted to get more of like the thrill or the, I don't know.
They got the thrill. It's just,
But
open it up,
they're
show the
trying
batteries.
to equate that with their car. And I'm like, what? Yeah, I don't.
And that's the weird part, because like I do equate like SpaceX with my car, but my car is so much better and so different than any other car I've ever driven. That's why I think it works.
Right.
I think I would like to imagine that that's why.
You know what's cool about our channel is that we've been doing this for 5 years. And whenever we do get someone to get a Model 3 or a Model Y or whatever, and then they reach out to us, I have never heard these words. I've never heard, darn, you were so wrong. Never heard that. Everyone says, you're so awesomely, thank you, I did it, it's great. And I'm just saying, like, we're introducing people to something that we know they're going to like. It's kind of like when you introduce them to like a movie that you know is going to be a classic, right? And they're like, thanks for recommending that movie.
Or you're like, go watch The Wire. And they're like, wow.
Right.
It's like that. And that is Tesla's strong point.
Yeah.
Again, it's this thing that hardly ever gets talked about.
Yeah.
They don't need to advertise. They don't need to advertise. Basically, every other company needs to advertise their cars to the point of exhaustion.
Well,
I have been seeing the same Volvo ad where they show the phone, they pan to the plugs.
Yep.
It's a clever ad. They follow the cord, goes to the car. Clever ad. Great way to show it. I would show it the exact same way. But I see it over and over and over again. And it's great. Glad that they're doing an EV. But they need to advertise that way.
Do you know why? Because most products are not an order of magnitude better than the last product that you had of the same type. And so, that is a Tesla. It's an order of magnitude better than any other car you've driven.
No other car. Like, I want to just think. Remember Pimp My Ride back in the day? And they would put a PlayStation 2 in the back of a car, and some basketball player would play himself on the PS2 in the back of his pimped out car. And you were just like, wow, that's the coolest thing ever. Looking back on it, not that cool, but still cooler than basically every other car on the road, because you can't do that in any of the other cars. You'd still need to Pimp My Ride, put the thing in the back of the car.
Yeah.
Today, I can play a game on my Tesla.
You can watch Hulu in your car.
Right. It's
and
so,
a beautiful screen. With beautiful sound.
Right.
Like no other car even comes close to having that screen.
I know.
Which you can use for anything. Navigation, the new self-driving interface, like all of it. It's amazing. And you're like, why hasn't no one thought of this before? And then when Tesla does think of it, why is no one else except for Chinese companies, which let's just talk about Chinese companies for a second. Hats off to them when they see something that's good, instead of American car companies, which are like, let's make it
crappy and dumb.
Let's not even do it at all now because you got to it first. Instead, they go, great idea. Let's do that.
We'll copy them.
Yeah. Which it's a form of flattery.
Right.
Yes, it's a great way to do it. So do it that way.
Yeah. I can't rant and rave about my car enough. I mean, the giant map. It's changed the way that I drive.
Yeah.
I'm just like, point A and point B. I'm not going to follow the navigation. I'm going to forge my own path.
Right.
And I've seen more of the world in my little area of the world than I had ever seen. I'd be like, I've never been down this street. This is so cool. All because I have a gigantic map that is telling me where I'm going. It's not a GPS where it's like, take a left. And I'm like, I'm glad to get to grandma's house. It's not that at all. It's just like, I'm an explorer and I can go wherever I want. I don't know.
Speaking of climate change, it's 70 degrees here in New England today, and this studio is warming up because we got the lights. So when I come back from the show and you're like, why is Zach not wearing a sweatshirt? It's because this room is getting hot.
Yeah, and all these lights.
Hot.
Man.
Let's go to this next story, which is not really a story. It's just a thought that I had, which is, we now have President-elect Biden, and he has been very pro-EV in many of his speeches and stuff. I hope he keeps to that when he's actually the president.
Yeah.
But I'm thinking maybe, I'm being a little more hopeful now that I've been in a while, maybe it's possible that we could see an extension of the U.S. federal tax credit for EVs. It's $7,500. Obviously, Tesla ran out, right? Because remember how it works. A car manufacturer reaches 200,000 EV vehicles delivered, and then the credit's phased out. And Tesla, this happened at the end of last year. But if Congress and the president decide to extend the credit, it could mean that Tesla customers could once again get an incentive, which would be a game changer for many people because $7,500 off, it made a big difference for you.
Right. And I mean, that was the mid-range. That wasn't even the standard range plus. No one who bought the standard range plus got the full tax credit.
I would argue you might not have been able to get into the car if you hadn't gotten the tax credit.
Absolutely not. I would have to have waited for the actual $35,000 car. In fact, my car was $35,000 because of incentives.
It's like getting 20% off your car. So I'm just saying, I thought of this and then I'm like, how does that become a reality? It becomes a reality very easily. You, if you're an American, reach out to your congressperson and you tell them that you want it. And then the other thing I was thinking about, and we put a link down below to how to get to your congressperson if you can't find them. But I'm thinking, why not just tweet them? Because I checked the other day and almost every congressperson has a Twitter account and they really do monitor it because they're tweeting all the time now. So it's pretty easy. Just tweet on there some things, and that's actually going to multiply the effect of your thought because then other people are going to like it, share it, retweet it.
It's not just a letter that can be like, whatever, throw that away. It'll be a tweet that they might have to respond to, especially if you get enough likes. So...
And explain your reasoning.
Right.
Like if we extend this credit, more people will get into EVs. It's not, a lot of people I think view this as like, well, the federal government's just wasting money. No, because if you get someone in a Tesla, there's going to be health benefits, which far outweigh the $7,500 tax credit, first of all. And the whole point of taxes is it's supposed to give policies that change people's behaviors. We give a deduction, for instance, for buying a house. We don't have to. We decided that's what we wanted to do. I don't know if it's right or wrong, but that's what the tax code does. We also give companies reasons to go and spend their money a certain way.
Right.
We tax into the tax code.
Cigarettes. It's to incentivize people to stop smoking because it makes it more and more expensive to smoke, which will hopefully prevent people from smoking. And if you smoke, please stop.
Right.
Just for your own sake. Every time I bring it up, I just want to let everyone know. I know that I'm speaking to an audience of a couple thousand people here on the Patreon bonus story. I care about you. Please stop smoking.
And I thought we'd end with this story. This is from our buddy Tom Scott, and I can say that because we've actually hung out with him in Europe it was UK last year. We're big fans of his channel, and he's done a really good story here on why we got to keep the pumps running.
This is the Ruhr Valley in Germany, and it used to be a mining region. It used to produce huge amounts of anthracite, the sort of coal that you have to dig deep tunnels to reach, sometimes more than a kilometre down into the ground. But the last deep coal mine here closed at the end of 2018 as the world steadily shifts to renewables. But you can see the legacy of that mining in the landscape in places like this. Strange hills which are old spoil tips, dumping sites for everything that was dug up that wasn't coal, all the earth and rock that was moved out of the way to create the mine shafts. They're steadily being reclaimed, trees have been planted all over, and several of them now have art, like this at the top. I visited one art piece called the Tetrahedron yesterday. The weather was bad and there was fog, and honestly it felt like I was on some sort of alien planet from a sci-fi show. The hill I'm standing on has an amphitheatre as well, although it's a little run down now. It is very, very difficult to get across the sheer scale of these on camera, the incredible volume of earth and rock that was moved over decades. Don't get me wrong, the Ruhr Valley is still industrial. There are still open cast coal mines and factories producing all sorts of things, but it does seem like there's more and more talk about the legacy of industry here than actual industry itself. One old coal mine is now a museum and World Heritage Site. There's another strange legacy of the old coal mines here though. If you take that much material out from under the surface and put it on top, the mass of it starts changing the landscape in a very different way. Parts of this valley sank unevenly as far as 20 meters down in places. And that altered the way that rainwater drains, in that it started to drain towards where people live. So yesterday, I got to visit one of the pumping stations that puts the water back where it's supposed to be.
The problem is that we have coal mining in this area since 1850, and because of this the landscape has sunk down, and so we had to pump the whole river Boye up 18 meters to the river Emscher. And the river Emscher is flowing to the Rhine. In my operational areas we have about 60 pump stations, from a very small station with a few hundred liters to this station with 40,000 liters per second. 83 square kilometers is our operational area. This one station. From my operational area, nearly 60% would be flooded if the whole pump stations wouldn't work. If you have dry conditions, it would be 4 to 5 days. In heavy rain conditions, only 5 hours. The water will get out.
Just to be clear, those pumps are moving a whole river, a small river, but a whole river, 18 meters up and through massive underground pipes, so the water can then join a bigger river that does eventually flow to the sea. There are around 180 pumping stations, large and small, across this valley. That one station is the largest. After a heavy storm, it will move up to 40,000 litres of water every second. If you look at articles about this, they'll sometimes mention groundwater and aquifers, but the engineers here told me that is wrong. It is probably a mistranslation. These are storm drains to deal with rainwater.
The coal mining companies are paying for this because they had dig the coal, and because the landscape is sunk down, so they have to pay for.
When coal mining started here 150 years ago, no one thought about the land sinking. And when they did notice it, which was somewhere around 1900, it didn't stop them mining. They just built the first pumps. The coal was worth the money and the trouble then. But running the pumps is an eternal cost. Not technically eternal, I guess, but this won't go away in 100 or 1,000 or 10,000 years. Not until something equally dramatic and geological comes along to reshape the land. If people want to live in the Ruhr Valley, not the Ruhr Swamp or the Ruhr Lake, then the pumps must run.
Okay, so I want you to just, if you didn't grasp that for a second, at that one pumping station, if there's a heavy rain, there are certain areas within that area of the pumping station that will flood in 5 hours if the pumps don't work.
Not within the pumping station, within the
within the area
around
Right.
the pumping station.
And so that means that forevermore, they're going to have to keep pumps like this running, or else the people who live there will live in a lake.
And the cost benefit analysis that was done in the 1900s.
Here's how it went. It went like this. There was none.
Yeah, it was just all right. Whatever. Yeah, we'll pay for it. Who gives a crap? We're making tons of money off this coal. The coal is finite. The pumping is going to be
in forever.
Pretty much functionally forever. It's going to be for thousands of years.
Right. Wrap your head around that for a second, because the guy at the pumping station said it's being paid for by the coal companies.
They're just went out of business.
They're all going out of business. Yeah. They're not going to last much longer, even if they are still around.
So guess who's going to pay for it?
The people of Germany.
This is why we must stop these fossil fuel companies. It's insane that they are still allowed to do business when they knew what they were doing, when we know what they're doing, and the effect that it's going to have and the costs.
Also, in 1900, I'm sure there were smart enough people to know that as you pull things out of the ground at that rate, that there's going to be some bad problems to do with water. It's pretty simple science.
Right.
So I'm pretty sure they knew something bad was going to happen. Now, I'm sure there were less people in Germany at the time, and maybe not a lot of people live there. So well, screw them. But they did it to themselves. And now when we talk about this and we talk about renewable energy, everyone's like, oh, well, solar, it's just going to be hard to do, and we have to put it on roofs. And you know what's also hard to do? Keeping thousands of pumps running so that people don't live underwater.
Right. And I mean, we're not talking about just one place. We're talking about New York. We're talking about Boston. We're talking about Miami. We're talking about Los Angeles. We're talking about basically every city, which is on the coast, which is most cities. And we're just, Venice is nice, but not a lot of stuff happens in Venice. It's the sinking city or whatever. It's not like a major hub where
watch it now, buddy. Watch it.
It's a beautiful city.
Yes, it is.
It's a beautiful city, and we're going to lose it, and we're not going to have it anymore because it's going to be underwater. And was already sinking, and now we're going to pour water on top of that.
Right.
But that's going to be every city, and we're going to have. Florida is currently working on stuff to try and prevent, certain areas of Miami from being underwater.
This is a really good example, because in 1900, when this started happening in Germany, some smart people could have gotten together and go, you know what, let's just play this out 100 years.
Right.
I don't think this is a good idea.
Instead of building mounds on top of the ground, maybe we go back in and fill it.
Right.
And yeah, there's a cost, but guess what? If you take these pumps running for thousands of years, you know what's cheaper? To either not dig the coal out of the ground or to do something else, anything else. Right. And they could have explored those solutions. Instead,
or they could have started putting the money in a fund saying, we don't know the answer right now, but we'll need a lot of money to solve it someday. So let's start saving, and it'll cost more for the coal today, but we got to put this money in a fund.
Right.
They didn't. They said it's just cheap coal.
And it's that lack of forethought that just always plagues humanity.
And it's not just you, Germany. In America, we just blow up the top of a mountain. We all the runoff just completely destroys habitats. Everything below stream is just destroyed.
Right.
And then we go, oh, why did that happen? Because you blew up a mountain.
And then we ship that coal to a place and they burn it, and then they have the coal ash and they put it in a pond. And next time there's a major storm and all the runoff from the pond gets everywhere, and everyone's like, oh, why did everything die? It's the same thing over and over and over and over again. And it's so sickening and disgusting and annoying that it just keeps happening again and again. And we never learn. We never make any changes.
What if you went into a school and you said to the kids, when you grow up, there's two choices for jobs. You could work underground in a mine, or you could work above ground putting in solar and wind. No one's going to want to work in a mine.
And that's one. Yeah, it's just one thing. And it brings it back to, this election. Everyone's talking about, basically nobody likes the electoral college. No one is like, oh, thank goodness for that electoral college, really saved the day. Basically, it doesn't matter which side of the aisle you're on. You're like, why do we have this?
Yeah, it was a system that made a lot of sense back in the 1700s because they didn't have computers and they didn't have fast ways of doing things. So I get it. That was great for the time.
But when they were sitting down and they were writing the Constitution, they couldn't ever fathom a state like California. California is so much bigger than the entire nation of the United States was at the time. Like, basically equivalent landmass and just so much more population. They would never have been able to even conceive Los Angeles as a city. There was no such thing as a city that dense. Well, LA isn't that dense, but that large.
Right.
They couldn't picture New York being that dense. They couldn't picture a lot of things. And you know what? They were pretty freaking smart. And they said, we know that we don't know everything. We know that we don't know what machine guns are. We know that we don't know what, airplanes are, or that, you could have a car. We get all that.
Well, I bet they were smart enough to think that when things change, they'll just change this document we wrote.
Because they said, here's the amendment part.
Right.
You can amend.
Right. They didn't say this is so good. This is so good that you can never change it.
You guys don't know what you're talking about, you future folks. It's always going to be this way. No. They said, okay, we get it. Things are going to change. Here's the method for you to do that.
We haven't changed it in decades.
Yeah.
And yet, look at all the changes that we've had. And here's the other thing. Why is it that some people's votes, if they live in a certain place, is worth one fraction of someone else's vote?
Right.
That makes no sense.
And I understand. Back in the day, you might be saying, well, Virginia's so large, we don't want Virginia to take over all of our politics, so we're going to make sure that some of the other states have some sort of say. Totally can see and understand why you'd want that. But let's adapt it. I don't think they would ever imagine the difference in population between Wyoming and, say, California or Texas or some of the other states.
Right.
It's so disproportionate. If you live in, like, Wyoming, your vote counts so much more than someone who lives in New York.
Yeah, they set this up when they had 13 states. Like, this makes no sense today.
Look, you might say, I believe in the Electoral College. We could have a discussion about that, right? I'm not saying that I'm right or that I'm putting forward any idea. I'm just saying, isn't it a little weird that since the 1700s, this would be like if you taught physics and you were like, and that's what Aristotle said.
Right.
Why does the ball slow down? Because it got tired. Right. What? No, we know more now. Right. So that's why we don't base our physics education off of what a guy thought thousands of years ago.
I want to go one step further. Why should we be voting this way? I know it's been baked into your heads that, of course, on election day, we go down and we do it this way. But you know what? In this last election, we did it all sorts of different ways.
Right.
And none of them are that good. I mean, putting it in the mail so that a machine can crunch it up and now you can't read it.
And that thousands of ballots weren't counted because they didn't arrive by mail to a voting place on time?
Or that the signatures don't match. I don't even know what signature I have on file. Maybe I did it when I was, 18 and it doesn't match anymore.
None of my signatures ever look the same. I've tried to make them look the same. They never look the same.
Look,
if you get a poster of mine, congratulations, it's a unique one.
I know that you're kind of not an advocate of voting with the internet, but I gotta say, there's got to be a way to vote with the internet. It is our technology, and I can't imagine 100 years from now we're still going to be going down to some polling place and putting a mark on a piece of paper.
Right.
This has got to stop. We cannot have a system where it takes days and days to count things, and certain people's got lost.
Right.
When I bank on the internet, I've been banking on the internet for more than a decade, and everything's been fine. Now, I'm not saying something can't go wrong, but we can account for that. We can have systems in place that'll account for that.
Cybersecurity experts have said that, voting online or through the internet could be dangerous. And
lots of things could be dangerous.
A lot of things could be dangerous.
The system we have now can be dangerous.
I think that if we said as a nation, look, we've put a freaking man on the moon. I'm pretty sure if we said we want in a decade to be able to come up with a system of voting online, and by 2030, we're going to be voting online. I think that that's a easy one. That's a 2-inch putt into the hole. I just want to say,
where we vote, I know every state's different, every county's different, but when we went to vote, you go up to a person, you say your name and street address, they check your name off, you go vote, right? Well, what if someone else had gone that day and said, I'm Zach, and this is my address, and they checked the name off so that I couldn't vote? Like, no one looked at my ID, no one checked anything, it was just, you go down and say that.
Right.
Now, that's kind of stupid if you are trying to keep things from being, like, bad. So why don't we come up with a better system?
And it's on both sides of the issue because there are places that do require you to have an ID and make it extremely hard for certain people to get IDs.
Right.
So how about we just have it so that way there are many different ways to vote. Maybe there are paper ballots. You can go in and vote the old-fashioned way if you want to. You can also vote online. You can also then check what?
You did say old-fashioned, and that's what I'm getting at, is that
I know.
We when something gets to be old-fashioned, it's usually for a reason because we've come up with a better way. The internet is a better way to communicate.
I'm just hedging my argument with
you.
the but I don't know how to use the internet or how to use a computer.
Sure.
Okay. So for the Amish people, yes, we will still have the paper ballots. But we need to just have we need to be talking about our systems, and a lot of the world doesn't talk about the systems. They just talk about certain pieces of the system that we can just kind of change out and be like, oh, it looks better with this. Oh, it looks better. Oh, this one's better. Or, I hate that one, this piece. And it's like, that's not the whole thing. The whole thing is around you. It's the system. And if you actually were thinking about how it works and what changes you could make to make things better, that would be the most important thing.
All right, we got to get on.
We have to do the rest of the show. Thank you so much for supporting us and letting us talk and rant and rave. Because if we couldn't do that, I hope it's a little cathartic to you too. I hope you, in some ways, feel the same way about certain things. We'll talk to you next week. Now you know.